The moment Commander Riven Hale stepped into the crystalline atrium of House Kareth, the temperature seemed to drop. 1,000 alien eyes turned toward him, some curious, most contemptuous. High above, arched ceilings shimmered like frozen nebulae, and violet banners rippled with the crest of the ruling bloodline, a twin-bladed moon flanked by 3 flame-tipped stars. He was the only Terran in the room. At the far end of the hall, the Empress sat on her obsidian throne, a mask of indifference painted across her sharp face. To her right stood 3 daughters, each of them a future ruler, each of them terrifying in her own way. But only one stole his breath. The eldest, tall, powerful, cloaked in rust-colored robes that revealed more muscle than they hid. Her eyes, molten amber with slit pupils, never blinked. And her fur, burnt orange, the color of dying suns, soft around her face but bristling down her arms and legs like flame-given form. A warrior's tail curled behind her like a whip. This, then, was Kyra Verix, heir to the Empire and sworn enemy to all things Terran. "You're braver than you look," she said aloud, her voice smooth but sharp. "Or dumber." Riven offered a faint smile. "Can I be both?" Some of the nobles laughed. Kyra did not. Her sister Vale leaned close. Pale as frost, with silvery fur and a soft expression that barely concealed cruelty. "He smells like metal and fear." "No," said the youngest, Ilari, quieter than the others. Her violet eyes flicked up, curious. "He smells like bait." The Empress raised a hand. "Enough." All 3 daughters fell silent. Riven stepped forward. "I come representing Terra's council. My message is simple: peace through union." "You want to marry one of my daughters?" the Empress asked, her lips twitching. "How quaint." "No. But I'll do it if that's the price." A ripple moved through the crowd. Kyra's ears twitched. "You're offering yourself like tribute?" "I'm offering alliance. And I know how your court works. Blood binds more than words." The Empress stood. "Then so be it. You will marry my eldest, Kyra, for 1 Virian cycle." Kyra's fists clenched. "Mother! Or you'll lose your claim to the throne," the Empress added smoothly. "This is your test, child. Pass it or perish." Kyra turned to Riven, her eyes glowing like forged fire. "You won't survive a week." He met her gaze without flinching. "Then I guess we'll both be entertained." She stepped forward, nose inches from his. "You'll regret this," she whispered. Riven shrugged. "Already do." Behind them, the Empress's voice rang like steel. "The binding begins at dawn. Prepare yourselves." And with that, the game began. The royal suite was larger than Riven expected. 3 floors. 8 rooms. A central fire pit. A balcony that overlooked the golden canyon veins of Kareth Prime's capital. And 1 bed. Kyra stormed in ahead of him, her boots clicking against polished obsidian. Her ears twitched in annoyance as her tail flicked. "This is a mistake," she snapped. "A diplomatic stunt with no honor." Riven dropped his pack by the window and turned slowly. "Trust me, I don't dream of sharing a bed with someone who might kill me mid-snore." Kyra didn't laugh. She unslung her war axe and drove it headfirst into the wall. "Then sleep on the floor. There are 5 chairs and 1 bed." Riven folded his arms. "And I'm not curling up like a dog. Don't tempt the metaphor." Ilari entered next, her steps silent, her white robes flowing like smoke. She watched them both with quiet intensity. "Do we even know if humans can mate properly with our kind? Is that what this is to you?" Riven asked. "A test of breeding compatibility?" "Everything here is a test," Vale replied, slinking through the side door with a smirk. She laid on a curved sofa like a lounging cat, one knee exposed beneath her split dress. "Especially you." Kyra ignored them both and stood inches from Riven. "Here's how this works: we survive the year. We don't speak unless necessary. You keep your hands, eyes, and intentions to yourself. If you cross me, you'll end me." Riven finished. "Yeah. I'm getting that vibe." She stepped even closer. her breath hot against his neck. I don't bluff. I don't scare easy. Then you're an idiot. I've been called worse. He smiled faintly. Usually by ex-girlfriends. Kyra blinked once. Then, with a growl of frustration, she turned and stalked to her private chamber. The door slammed shut. Elari watched her go, then looked at Riven with unsettling calm. She's afraid of you. She doesn't even know me. That's why. Later that night, the bed remained untouched. Riven lay sprawled across a pile of floor cushions, half covered in a thermal cloak. His shoulder ached from the hard surface, but he said nothing. He couldn't sleep. Not with the silence pressing in from every wall like a trap waiting to spring. Then he heard it. A soft step. Bare feet. He opened one eye. Kyra stood above him, arms crossed, her fur catching the low light like wildfire. I can't sleep with your scent in the room, she said. Want me to breathe outside for the night? No. I want to know why you came. He propped himself up on one elbow. You heard me. Tara wants peace. Tara wants leverage. He didn't deny it. So does your mother. Kyra knelt beside him, her eyes sharp. You'll regret letting her use you. She's not the only one playing the game. Kyra's jaw twitched. Then play carefully, Terran. You're not in your galaxy anymore. And with that, she stood and vanished into shadow again. Riven lay back down, staring at the ceiling. So this is how it begins, he thought. Morning broke across Kareth Prime like molten light across glass. Riven was already up, his boots crunching across the gravel of the palace training yard. His shirt clung to him, soaked with sweat as he moved through old Terran drills, strikes, feints, evasions. He didn't ask for an audience. He had one anyway. Kyra stood in the archway, arms folded, tail swaying. Behind her, Elari sat cross-legged on a stone bench, eyes narrowed in quiet study. You train like a man trying to outrun something, Kyra said. Maybe I am. Riven didn't pause. His breathing stayed steady. Maybe it's catching up. She stepped onto the sand, her own boots scraping lightly. You won't last 5 minutes in the blood rings if that's all you've got. Good thing I'm not here for sport. No, Kyra said, tossing him a weighted practice blade from the rack. You're here for humiliation. He caught it. You planning to deliver it yourself? She didn't answer. Just drew her own blade, a curved glaive etched in runes. Then she lunged. He blocked. Barely. She moved like a wildfire, fast, relentless, beautiful in a way that promised pain. He ducked the second swing, countered with a strike that grazed her side. Kyra growled. That the best you've got, Terran? I'm pacing myself. Wrong answer. She went low. He sidestepped. The flat of her blade slammed into his ribs, and he stumbled back. You think one night in this palace makes you worthy? She hissed. You're a diplomatic footnote. A novelty. Nothing more. Riven steadied his breath, then met her eyes. Funny. You're hitting me like you believe otherwise. That stopped her. Kyra's blade dropped a fraction. You think I care what happens to you? I think, Riven said, you're not used to people staring into your fire without blinking. She charged again, but this time, when their blades locked, their faces inches apart, she hesitated. You don't belong here, she whispered. Neither do you, he replied. Not really. Kyra's eyes flared, but she didn't pull away. Elari finally spoke from the bench. This is a mistake. No, Kyra said softly, her voice thick with something she didn't name. This is how wars start. They broke apart. Neither moved to strike again. That night, Riven found a message scrawled across the mirror in his suite. You will beg before this ends. He didn't smile. But he didn't wipe it away either. The next morning, Riven entered the dining chamber to find Vale already seated, her gown dark as spilled ink, slit high on both sides, revealing legs crossed like blades. Coffee? She purred, tilting her head. Or do Terrans prefer something stronger? He didn't hesitate. Water. Poisoned, if possible. I like a challenge. Vale's smile didn't reach her eyes. Still deflecting with humor. Still testing me like I'm not already married to your sister. And yet, she said, you keep looking at me. I look at threats, he replied evenly. And puzzles. She laughed once. Then you'll love our family. As Riven sat, Ilari entered silently and took her usual place near the end of the table. Her eyes met his for only a moment before drifting away. Kyra arrived last, her mane of fire-colored fur pulled back into a tight braid. She wore armor today, sleek, matte, and clearly ceremonial. She said nothing, just poured herself a drink and sipped with one eye always on him. So this is breakfast, Riven muttered. Feels more like pre-battle ritual. It is, Ilari said. We just haven't chosen the battlefield yet. Vale stood and slid behind him, her hands suddenly at his shoulders. Tense, she murmured. Want help with that? I'm surrounded by potential assassins. I think I've earned the tension. We're wives, Vale corrected, kneading his shoulders. Wives who've started to wonder why mother chose you. Kyra's voice cut the air. Because he's stubborn. Because he's clever. Ilari added, barely audible. Because he's dangerous. Vale whispered in his ear. Riven stood suddenly, slipping out from beneath her grip. He crossed to Kyra and locked eyes. If you're trying to break me, you'll need more than morning seduction and thinly veiled threats. Kyra stared up at him, unreadable. You think this is seduction? I think it's war in silk. Vale's eyes gleamed. And you haven't even seen our sharpest weapons. Later, as he stepped into the washroom, Riven found another message carved into the steamed mirror. Same crimson pigment. Same harsh script. You will kneel. He dragged his thumb through the lettering, smearing it. Get in line, he muttered. Outside, the twin sons of Kareth were rising, and so was something else. Heat. Pressure. Tension. And whatever game the sisters were playing, Riven wasn't just a piece on their board. He was a rival player. The air was thick with heat by mid-afternoon. Most of the palace slipped into its usual hush, nobles vanishing into shade, corridors falling silent save for the soft brush of robes and distant murmurs of court intrigue. Riven preferred the noise of his own pulse in his ears. He stripped to his training gear and returned to the sandpit behind the eastern spire, body slick with sweat, moving through his blade drills in precise, mechanical rhythm. The movements anchored him: cut, pivot, guard, recover. He didn't hear her approach until her voice floated from the arch. You train like you're trying to impress someone. He turned. Ilari stood watching, her arms crossed loosely beneath the folds of her pale robe. I train to survive, Riven replied. No one survives this place without bleeding. He sheathed his blade and faced her. Is that a threat? She shook her head slowly. A memory. She stepped down into the sand. Kyra isn't the only one you've rattled. Vale's been distracted. And I can feel something shifting in myself. You sound like that's a problem. It is, she said quietly. Because for the first time, I'm starting to wonder what happens if you don't break. You expected me to fold. I expected you to run. You haven't. That unnerves people like us. Riven wiped his brow and nodded toward the sparring rack. Then test me. Ilari hesitated. Kyra fights with rage. Vale with seduction. Me? She stepped into the circle. I fight with truth. They began slowly, measured steps, probing feints. Ilari moved like water, fluid and silent. Riven adjusted to her rhythm, meeting her blade in the middle, never pressing too hard. Then she shifted. A fast twist, a sudden disarm, her blade against his throat. I win, she said, breath light. Riven didn't flinch. Then asked your question? She lowered her blade but didn't step back. What do you see when you look at us? 3 warriors, he said. Each with a different weapon. Each with the same fear. Her eyes narrowed. And what's that? Wanting something they were told to destroy. She blinked once. Slowly. Then she kissed him. Not fast. Not furious. Not like Kyra, not like Vale. Soft. Like someone who'd stopped pretending they were unaffected. When she pulled away, her voice was barely audible. This changes nothing. It already did, Riven said. That night she didn't speak during dinner. She didn't have to. Kyra watched her from across the table. Vale leaned close to whisper something but paused, sensing something had shifted. The first crack had formed. And none of them knew what would grow from it. To be continued in Section 06. Shall I keep going? By morning, Riven was gone. Ilari awoke in her chambers, breath caught somewhere between sleep and dread. She crossed the suite to the balcony, fingers tugging the silver curtain aside. He wasn't training. He wasn't pacing. He wasn't anywhere. A ripple of unease passed through her. She wasn't the only one who noticed. Kyra strode into the common chamber a moment later, still tying her wrist guards, eyes scanning the space. Where is he? Gone, Ilari said softly. Gone? Vale echoed, entering behind them. Or just hiding? He doesn't hide, Kyra said without hesitation. That's what makes him dangerous. He's not dangerous, Ilari said. He's shifting the gravity. Of this house? Vale arched an elegant brow. Or of us? Kyra's jaw tightened. He's testing limits. He's already passed them, Ilari whispered. They didn't speak again until they found him. Riven returned from the archives beneath the palace, a weathered tome under one arm and sweat beading his brow from the climb. Kyra caught him first, literally, grabbing his arm as he passed through the upper corridor. What were you doing in the deep stacks? Reading, he said. Learning your empire's history. Its wars. Its rebellions. The blood that built this throne. Don't dig too deep, Kyra said. Some truths don't want to be unearthed. I'm not afraid of roots, Riven replied. They usually explain the poison. She didn't release his arm. Are you planning something? I'm preparing, he said calmly. Because I don't think we're just playing pretend anymore. Kyra didn't reply. Instead, she leaned in close and whispered, You shouldn't have let Ilari kiss you. I didn't, Riven replied, eyes unwavering. She chose to. That night, the sisters sat alone in the garden, separately, together. Vale chewed her thumb, pacing in the shadow of a vine-laced wall. Ilari sat cross-legged beneath a lantern bloom, quiet. Kyra leaned against the fountain's edge, tail flicking. We're unraveling, Vale said at last. No, Ilari murmured. We're becoming something new. Then we either cage it, Kyra said, or we burn with it. There was silence. Then, unexpectedly, Vale said, Then let's burn him first. Ilari raised an eyebrow. You mean? Seduce him. Fully, Vale said. Let him drown in want. Twist him until he's nothing but need. Weaponize the bond, Kyra murmured. Use his instincts against him. Ilari didn't speak. Not at first. Then she nodded. If this is war, then let's fight like queens. They didn't know it yet, but the trap they were about to set would be the one they'd all fall into. It started with a dress. Not armor. Not robes. Not ceremonial garb wrapped in empire and legacy. A dress. Vale wore it first, a shimmering cloth of sable that clung to her like liquid shadow, split high enough to weaponize curiosity. When Riven entered the war chamber to deliver a sealed reply to the Empress's envoy, she was already there, sipping from a crystal flute. You're late, she said, voice smooth. I'm early, he replied. You're just dramatic. Vale laughed lightly. Then come sit with the drama. We have much to discuss. He hesitated. The scent of her perfume was deliberate, something floral, unfamiliar, designed to soften the air between them. He sat anyway. Your posture is guarded, she noted. You're flanking me with a trap, he said. I think that's allowed. Vale leaned in. What if I told you this wasn't war? I'd say you were lying. Her smile curved. Good. I hate wasting effort on the dull ones. She stood, crossed to him slowly, heels whispering against marble. Her hand reached out, fingers brushing the collar of his tunic. Still haven't begged, Commander. Still haven't earned it. Her nails trailed down the side of his throat, just short of clawing. Then she stepped back. This was the warm-up. That evening, Ilari waited in his chamber. No questions. No words. Just a look. One that said, I know what you're doing. I'm doing it too. She sat on the edge of the bed as he dried his hair from the wash basin. Her robe slipped down her shoulder. Intentional. Timed. You going to pretend this is coincidence? Riven asked. She shook her head. I'm going to watch. That's all. So she did. Eyes following the way he moved. Where he reached. Where his back tensed. She said nothing else, only left a note on the pillow before leaving. You're bleeding into us. And we're starting to like the taste. The next day was Kyra's turn. But she didn't dress up. Didn't perfume. Didn't wait. She found him training again, shirtless and breathless. You're running from us, she said. I'm training. Same thing. She threw a blade at his feet. Fight me. I don't fight people I'm sharing a bed with. Then you'll love this. Kyra snarled, charging. Her strikes were fast. Wild. Unfiltered. She was fire barely contained. And Riven, he didn't hold back either. Not this time. He blocked. Countered. Slammed her backward into the pillar. But she twisted free. Spun. Shoved him back. You want honesty? She hissed. I hate that you're in my head. Then stop lying to yourself. She didn't speak. She grabbed his shirt. Pulled him to her. And kissed him like the world was ending. When they broke apart, she whispered, I want to kill you. He leaned in. Then aimed for the heart. That night, the three sisters said nothing to each other. But they didn't need to. The game had shifted. And Riven Hale had become more than a husband. He was now a storm pulling their world apart. It was Ilari who noticed the change first. The way Kyra walked more slowly past Riven's door. The way Vale stopped arguing and started watching. The way Riven no longer stood apart in court but just behind them, always silent, always alert. And the way her own heart stuttered now when he passed too close. By the second week, everything was sharper. The court began whispering. Nobles squinted. Aid servants paused with trays half raised. Something was off. They could feel it. The human wasn't being mocked anymore. He was being gravitated toward. Whispers turned to suspicions. So the sisters met in secret, in the night garden of the West Wing, beyond the scent of guards, where only echo moss grew. We're getting reckless, Kyra said, her arms crossed. We're getting visible, Vale corrected. Not the same thing. I don't care if they see, Ilari said softly. What matters is what they'll do when they do. Kyra looked between them. You're both falling for him. You're not? Vale challenged. Kyra said nothing. Then we do what we always do, Ilari said. We control the narrative. How? Vale asked. Pretend he means nothing when we're already marked by him? I can feel it, Ilari whispered. In my skin. Kyra's voice was low. Then we make a pact. No more games between us. No jealousy. No division. Vale stared. You're serious? Kyra nodded once. If we want to survive this, we survive it together. With him. Ilari reached out first. Vale took her hand next. Then Kyra's. They stood like that, three sisters once trained to outmatch each other now tangled in a silent alliance, bound by something they still refused to name. That night, it wasn't who kissed him first. It was who didn't stop the others. Riven had barely undressed when Vale entered, silent and sharp. Her lips were already on his neck, her breath hot with suppressed hunger. Ilari followed. No words. Just fingers. Heat. Eyes filled with unspoken questions she never wanted answered. Kyra came last. She didn't speak. She didn't touch. Not at first. She just stared at him until he stepped forward and pulled her in by the waist. She didn't resist. What followed wasn't ceremony. It was surrender. 3 bodies. 1 rhythm. The kind of ache that lingered behind skin. A war without weapons, a unity forged not through peace, but through fire. When it ended, they lay tangled in silence, breathless and wide-eyed. None of them dared speak first. Until Kyra, her voice dry and low, muttered, "This was a mistake." "No," Riven said. "This was inevitable." Elari sat up, her silver hair a curtain across her bare shoulders. "Then what now?" Vale pulled the sheets tighter. "Now we survive it." Riven stared at the ceiling, heart still hammering. But he knew. They'd crossed a line. One the court would never forgive. One the crown would never forget. And in the shadows beyond the chamber door, someone had already started listening. By dawn, the heat from the night still clung to the sheets, and the silence between them was deafening. Kyra had risen first, dressing in the dark without speaking. Elari followed, eyes unfocused as she wrapped herself in a long silk robe. Vale lingered, sitting at the edge of the bed, arms resting on her knees like a statue trying to forget it was flesh. Riven said nothing. There was nothing to say that didn't unravel what they'd woven in the dark. But the palace was already whispering. Later that morning, in the council wing, nobles stood in tight circles, voices low and tense. Why has the human not returned to Earth? Why was Kyra absent from her patrol rotation? Did you see Elari cancel her private meditation chamber again? It was spreading, like smoke from a fire still hidden. And it was about to ignite. The sisters gathered in a secluded conference chamber built beneath the meditation garden. Thick stone walls. No open comms. Just a circular platform surrounded by echo-dampening moss and emergency access panels. "We need to stop," Kyra said bluntly. "We already tried that," Vale said. "Didn't work. We were reckless," Elari admitted, brushing a hand through her hair. "Too many eyes. Too many shifts in our schedule. The whispers won't stay whispers for long," Kyra muttered. "So what?" Vale challenged. "We pretend last night never happened? Go back to insults and silence?" Kyra hesitated. Elari didn't. "We made a pact. This isn't about pretending anymore." "That's not the problem," Vale said. "The problem is, we liked it." Silence. They turned to Riven, who stood near the far wall, arms crossed. "What do you think?" Kyra asked. "I think," he said slowly, "you're all waiting for me to break this." "Will you?" Elari asked. "No." He stepped forward. "But if we keep hiding, someone else will break it for us." "You mean the court?" Vale asked. "I mean your father," Riven said. The name landed like a hammer. "Empress Vereen isn't blind," Kyra said. "But she isn't the one watching," Riven said. "There are others, officers, nobles, spies. Someone tried to follow me yesterday. I lost them in the archive tunnels." "You didn't report it?" Elari asked. "I wanted to tell you first." "That was stupid," Kyra growled. "No," he said. "That was loyalty." That stunned them. "I'm not here to shame you," Riven continued. "I'm here because I believe in something stronger than court politics." Vale raised a brow. "What's that?" "You." They didn't reply. But none of them walked away. And that was answer enough. Back in the private quarters, hidden near the ventilation shaft, a recording crystal blinked once, then vanished into the shadows, carried by a hand that did not belong to any of them. The palace had eyes. And now, it had evidence. The blade came just after midnight. Riven was in the lower gymnasium, sweat rolling down his spine as he finished his final set of combat reps. The room was dark but familiar, his sanctuary, his clarity. Until steel hissed through the air. He ducked instinctively. The curved blade sliced past his shoulder, grazing flesh. Blood blossomed instantly, hot and fast. He turned. No face, just a hood, smoke-colored and low. The second strike came faster. Riven blocked, twisted, grabbed the attacker's wrist, and snapped it. The figure screamed, but didn't fall. It dissolved. Smoke. Illusion. He sprinted up the staircase, blood trailing behind him. Reached the suite. Slammed the panel. Nothing. The alarm was dead. Someone had disabled it. This wasn't an outsider. This was a message. He burst through the doors. They were all waiting. Kyra was already pulling medical sealant from the wall kit, her armor half-fastened. Elari had a datapad scanning for toxins. Vale stood closest, face pale, jaw clenched, sword in hand. Where? Kyra barked, grabbing his arm. Gymnasium. Fast. Precision strikes. Valen trained? Vale asked. No, Riven grunted. Too clean. Too surgical. A professional? Elari asked. Riven winced as Kyra sprayed the cauterizer. Not for me. She paused. What? They didn't expect me to be awake, he said. This wasn't a kill order for me. This was a warning for you. They stared at him. This isn't about scandal anymore, Riven said. It's about power. Elari's hands trembled. If they know about us. They do, Kyra growled. And they're testing how far they can push before we fall apart. Vale sat slowly on the bed. This was always going to happen. Not like this, Elari said. Kyra stood, pacing. We need to lock the suite. Change our patrols. Vet the entire Royal Guard. We need to stop pretending, Riven said, voice low. They looked up. This alliance isn't political anymore. It's personal. And that makes it dangerous. Kyra nodded slowly. Then we fight. How? Elari whispered. Together, he said. No more hidden meetings. No more shadowed glances. If we're already bleeding for this, then we bleed for it out loud. Vale stared at him. You're not afraid? I'm terrified, he said. But I'm also done hiding. The next morning, they didn't sneak. They walked into the strategy chamber as one. Riven in black. The sisters in dark battle leathers. No jewels. No pleasantries. Just war in their eyes. The court fell silent. King Darren, yes, King, entered behind them, late. He hadn't summoned them. But he didn't stop them. Elari stepped forward. There was an attempt on our consort, she announced. Gasps. Kyra raised a blade fragment, broken, blood-stained. This wasn't a misunderstanding, she said. This was a strike against the Empire itself. Vale added the final blow. And if any of you were involved, know this, your war has already begun. Riven said nothing. He didn't have to. He stood behind them, tall and steady, shoulder-wound bandaged, eyes sharp. The sisters weren't circling the enemy anymore. They were declaring one. They didn't sleep that night. Not together, not apart. Not with the weight of what they'd just done still pressing against their ribs. Kyra sharpened her weapons until sparks flew. Elari paced the observatory floor until dawn. Vale soaked in scalding water, trying to uncoil her spine. And Riven? He stood on the balcony, overlooking the city of Kareth Prime, its glass towers lit with morning glow, its streets lined with expectation. He wasn't thinking of Earth anymore. He was thinking of what it meant to stand beside three women who could unmake an empire, because someone tried to break them, and failed. He heard the door open behind him. Soft footsteps. No hesitation. Still bleeding? Kyra asked, her voice low. No. He turned. But it wasn't deep. She joined him at the railing. We don't know who ordered it. No, he said. But they'll try again. Especially now that we've stopped pretending. Kyra's jaw clenched. You were right, you know. About what? That this isn't political anymore. It's personal. She looked up at him. That makes it harder to protect. Maybe, Riven murmured. But easier to fight for. She didn't answer. Not with words. She stepped in, touched his chest, pulled him close, and kissed him, slow, deliberate, not like the others. Not like heat. Like truth. When they broke apart, she whispered, "If you die, I'll burn everything down." He smiled faintly. "Then I'd better not die." Later, in the war chamber below the palace, they gathered in full armor. The sisters stood side by side, dressed in combat black. Not tradition. Not politics. Preparedness. The Empress had summoned them. And they weren't going alone. Riven joined them last, wearing ceremonial Terran gear, now upgraded with Valen war trim. A fusion of two bloodlines in motion. As they entered the hall, nobles parted like water. King Darren sat at the throne, watching. Unmoving. "Step forward," he commanded. They did. Together. The king's eyes passed over them slowly. "There are whispers. There is unrest. There is fear. No more hiding," Ilari said. "No more lies," Kyra added. "No more shame," Vale finished. "And the human?" the king asked. Riven met his eyes. Still standing. The king leaned forward. "Then answer me honestly, what is this?" Riven didn't blink. "This is loyalty. Built not on fear, but on choice." The king exhaled slowly. "You defied the laws of courtship. Of lineage. Of politics. We rewrote them," Kyra said. The king stood. "Then you must defend them." He raised a seal, a blood sigil etched in gold. "One of you will inherit this empire. And your consort," he turned to Riven, "will stand beside you. Not as shadow, but as flame." A beat of silence. Then three voices, in perfect unison. "We accept." And with that, the war became official. The war room beneath the palace pulsed with activity. Holograms lit the ceiling with enemy fleet pads, council descent zones, internal loyalty fractures. The royal strategists spoke in clipped tones, marking traitors with crimson glyphs and loyalists with dim white flares. But the sisters had their own council now. Just the four of them. Kyra, standing over the long obsidian table like a commander. Ilari, seated at the left, filtering through intelligence feeds with eyes sharp as orbit glass. Vale, leaning on the edge of the table, arms crossed, her robe half undone as usual, watching people instead of data. And Riven, still bandaged, still unbowed, quietly reading the room more than the maps. They weren't strategizing for battle. Not yet. They were planning how to survive the crown. "I counted 5 new palace staff assignments this week," Ilari said. "All unvetted. They're probing the cracks," Vale muttered. "Looking for soft spots." "They won't find any," Kyra snapped. "They already have," Riven said calmly. The sisters turned to him. "The first assassin wasn't meant to kill me. He was meant to show us where we're weakest. The second won't test. The second will strike. We'll be ready," Kyra said. "No, we won't," Ilari murmured. "Not if we keep reacting. We need to provoke." "You want to draw them out?" Vale asked. "I want them to think we're not scared," Riven said. "Because we're not." Ilari tilted her head. "Then you have a plan?" "Yes." Riven pointed to the upcoming public council forum on the holo display. "We stop hiding completely. No more suggestion. No more rumors. We go public. They'll declare open rebellion," Kyra said. "Let them," Riven said, eyes steady. "But let them do it with the entire empire watching." Vale looked at the map. "You'd use the enemy's fear against them. Isn't that what you taught me?" The three sisters exchanged a look. Kyra was the one who nodded first. "Then we give them a show." That evening, the four walked into the grand hall at the forum's peak. No formal regalia. No bodyguards. No performance. Just truth. Riven wore black again, trimmed in royal crimson, no longer a Terran delegate. Now a consort. An equal. Kyra took his left. Vale took his right. Ilari walked just behind. The nobles went silent like prey before a predator. Gasps. Whispers. Eyes wide. Then, from the back of the room, a voice rang out. This is treason. An older noble, draped in ancestral silver. You defile tradition. You spit on the bloodline. No, Kyra said, voice like thunder. We protect it. The noble sneered. He's not Valen. No, Vale said, stepping forward. He's better. Riven turned to the crowd, gaze unwavering. I didn't come to take your throne. But I won't let you take theirs. Elari's voice followed, low and certain. We choose him. Not because we were told to. Because we burn for him. Silence. Then a ripple. A murmur. A current shifting. And from the throne itself, the king's voice thundered. So be it. He stood, descending the dais. And in front of the entire court. He placed the royal seal in Kyra's hand. You are the flame, he said. Then to Riven. And you are the match. Later that night, the royal suite was still. Not quiet, there was breath, and the low thrum of suppressed adrenaline, but still. Riven stood shirtless at the tall glass panel facing the capital, muscles tense, gaze far beyond the horizon. Behind him, the royal bed was a sprawl of silk sheets and heat-soaked memory. He hadn't moved in an hour. Because this time, it felt different. Not seduction. Not war. Something more dangerous. Belonging. The door creaked softly. He didn't turn. You're brooding, Vale said from the threshold. She padded in barefoot, her robe half-draped over one arm, the other clutching a bottle of dark amber liquor. That's my job. Riven exhaled. I'm thinking. Dangerous, she teased, stepping beside him. Especially for someone whose mouth outruns his self-preservation instinct. He didn't smile. You feel it too, don't you? Vale paused. Yes. Elari's quieter. Kyra's angrier. You pace less. I don't pace, she muttered. You do, he said. When you're pretending not to be scared. Vale didn't deny it. Instead, she poured 2 drinks into crystal tumblers and handed him one. They won't stop, she said. Even with the king's blessing. Especially with it. I know. They'll wait for a mistake. A fracture. A reason to say you poisoned us. Then I don't give them one. Vale looked at him closely. You know what it means now, right? What? You're not just part of this. You're the center. If one of us falls, it breaks the others. And if you fall, they shatter, he finished. She nodded. We weren't built for unity. We were raised to outcompete each other. And yet, Riven said, his voice softer now, you chose me. And each other. Vale set down her glass. I didn't choose you. He turned to her. She stepped closer. I gave in to you, she whispered. There's a difference. Her fingers curled into his belt line. Her mouth brushed his jaw. Then, the door opened again. Elari stepped in, wrapped in silver lace, hair loose, eyes already knowing. She saw them and didn't pause. We need to talk, she said, walking straight to the bed and sitting down cross-legged. About what comes next. Now? Vale asked. While we're half naked? Especially now, Elari said. Where's Kyra? Riven asked. Armor hall. Sharpening blades she'll never use. She's scared, Vale muttered. She's always scared, Elari said, because she feels the most. Riven sat beside her. Then let's make a new pact. Both women looked at him. No more hiding. No more waiting for them to come for us. Elari tilted her head. You mean go on the offensive? I mean, make it impossible for them to divide us. Vale sank onto the bed beside him, her eyes gleaming. You've got an idea. He looked between them. Let's burn their rules. And build our own. At that moment, the door opened a third time. Kyra stood there, still in armor, chest rising and falling with unspent fury. She looked at the 3 of them, then closed the door behind her. and walked toward them. You talking revolution? She asked. Riven stood. Met her halfway. No, he said. I'm talking family. And then she kissed him. Not hard. Not desperate. Just right. Elari leaned in next, resting her forehead against his. Vale tangled fingers in his shirt and pulled him closer. They didn't speak again that night. They didn't need to. Because whatever came next, assassins, nobles, politics, they'd face it the way they burned. As one. Dawn broke like a blade through silk, cutting, clean, beautiful. But it didn't bring peace. Kyra was already awake when the light touched the marble. She stood in nothing but her underwraps, sweat glistening across her back as she hammered a new blade into shape. Sparks flew from her private forge, lighting the dark with heat and intent. This was how she focused. How she silenced the war in her chest. Behind her, Riven stirred. He didn't speak. He knew better now. Elari entered from the side chamber, tying her robe, expression unreadable. Vale followed, yawning, but alert. None of them spoke, not yet. The air between them was heavy with what hadn't been said the night before. The pact was made. The kiss sealed it. Now came the consequences. Kyra finally spoke, voice hoarse from smoke and sleep. I heard the Empress is summoning the High Circle. Elari nodded. Today. Noon. Emergency session. Vale poured herself water. What are the odds it's about us? Certain, Kyra replied, dipping the glowing metal into oil. It hissed violently. They'll want to test our cohesion. Push us from the inside. They won't get far, Riven said. We've already done what they fear most. And what's that? Elari asked softly. We stopped playing by their rules. Vale raised her glass. Then let's see how they like ours. They dressed in silence. No royal silks today. No glowing ceremonial cloaks. Battle blacks. Tight, efficient, intimidating. Elari braided her silver hair down her back, every movement deliberate. Kyra strapped twin blades to her back. Vale drew a slender dagger from beneath her pillow and kissed the hilt before hiding it under her belt. Riven wore the ceremonial Terran vest, but beneath it was his compression armor. His shoulder still throbbed, but the wound had hardened now, more symbol than injury. When they walked into the Grand Hall of Judgment, the air was already thick with anticipation. Nobles lined the outer ring, whispering like leaves in the wind. The Empress stood flanked by 3 war priests in crimson robes. She said nothing as the 4 entered. The high circle of Kerith, 12 ancient bloodlines seated in a sunken ring, stared down at them with expressions ranging from contempt to barely concealed fascination. They took their place at the center. The Empress finally spoke. You stand accused of violating the sacred accords of inheritance, she said, voice level. Of contaminating bloodlines. Of undermining Valen order. Kyra stepped forward. We stand together. No blood was broken. No laws were shattered. The Empress's eyes narrowed. No law, but every tradition. Tradition, Vale said, stepping beside her sister, isn't law. It's habit. A ripple of murmurs. Elari spoke next. And habits can be broken. Like loyalty? One of the elders sneered. No, Riven said. Like fear. Gasps echoed through the chamber. You forget, he continued. I didn't seduce these women. They chose me. Freely. Fully. Together. One of the nobles stood. Then what do you propose, Terran? That we bow to your filth? No, Kyra said coldly. You bow to your future. Elari added. You don't have to approve it. You just have to survive it. The Empress raised her hand. Silence. And then, with quiet finality, she said, Then let it be tested. A red orb emerged from the center pedestal. It hovered, humming faintly. The trial of flame, she announced. The old rite. Survive it, and your union will be honored. Vale's eyes narrowed. And if we don't? Then history forgets you. Kyra stepped forward. Then let the fire remember us. They stood before the chamber doors in silence, cloaked in heat and ritual shadow. The trial of flame was older than the Empire itself, an ordeal buried in myth, last invoked over a century ago. No noble had survived it in generations. It was used not to test strength, but to crush defiance. And they were walking into it willingly. "You're sure about this?" Riven asked, eyes sweeping the three warriors beside him. Kyra nodded first. "This isn't survival anymore." Ilari followed. "It's legacy." Vale smiled faintly. "And you're ours." The iron doors creaked open. Heat blasted them like a wall of breath from a sleeping dragon. The trial chamber was a living thing, stone floors split by glowing lines of magma, steam rising from vents in the ground, smoke curling around glass panels in the ceiling that magnified sunlight until it burned the floor. It was a crucible. And they were the offering. A circle of Valen judges sat in hovering thrones along the edges, eyes glowing with judgment. The Empress stood at the highest point, robes unmoving despite the boiling air. Her voice rang out, amplified by ancient acoustics. "For enter. If your bond is true, you will pass. If it fractures, you will burn. Choose your challenge." A holographic will spun to life in the air before them. Kyra stepped forward. Her hand hovered over the options: combat, endurance, memory, sacrifice. She looked at Riven, then her sisters. Then she picked endurance. The wheel spun. The trial began. The room shifted. Walls closed. The floor darkened. The air became thicker, hotter. Suddenly they were alone, cut off from each other by rising stone barriers. Riven's section turned pitch black. He couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't hear them. Then came the first whisper. "You don't belong here." It wasn't real. A projection. A memory. He kept walking. Another voice. Kyra's voice, but twisted. Cold. "You were never strong enough." He gritted his teeth. Not buying it. The floor heated. His boots hissed. The pain crept up his legs. Then light. A corridor. He stumbled into a new chamber and found Kyra collapsed to one knee, blood trickling from her ear. "Kyra!" She looked up. Sound field. She hissed. "Distorts balance." He crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. "I've got you." "No." She struggled to stand. "I've got you." They moved together, supporting, stumbling. Ilari joined them minutes later, dazed, eyes red. "Hall of Memory." She gasped. "They showed me Mother's last words." "Lies. All of them." Riven grabbed her wrist. "We're real. Stay here." Vale came last. Her robe was smoking. She was laughing. "They tried to seduce me," she said, voice hoarse. "Use your face." She touched Riven's chest. "Didn't work. I already want the real thing too much." They were all here. Together. The magma floor began to cool beneath their feet. A circle of flame erupted around them. The trial chamber shook. The Emperor stood, eyes wide. "It's stabilizing." One of the elders leaned forward. "They're sinking." In the center of the room, the four of them stood, hands clasped, breath ragged, surrounded by dying fire. And the trial orb turned white. Purified. Accepted. The room went still. Then the voice of the ancient system whispered. "They have endured." They didn't speak on the walk back. The corridor from the trial chamber to the royal suite was long and lined with polished obsidian. Every servant, guard, and noble they passed turned to stare, not in scorn this time, but awe. The flames hadn't broken them. They baptized them. Inside their quarters, no one moved at first. Riven sat heavily on the low bench by the water basin, pulling off his scorched boots. Steam rose from the leather. His feet were blistered. Kyra dropped her gauntlets beside him. "Let me see." He shook his head. "You're worse." "No, I'm angrier," she said, kneeling anyway and beginning to apply salve. "Different injury." Ilari sank into the corner cushion, arms limp. "My ears are still ringing." Vale sprawled across the nearest bed like a sun-warmed predator. I think I inhaled half the trial chamber. They were dirty, exhausted, burned in places, bruised in others. But none of them were broken. That wasn't a trial. Riven muttered. No, Kyra said. It was a message. Ilari opened her eyes. To us? To them, Vale replied. And they got it. Silence hung for a moment. Then Ilari said quietly, the moment that orb turned white, the balance shifted. Kyra nodded. The high circle won't speak it aloud, but they saw. Felt it. They saw unity. Riven added. Something they don't understand. Vale smirked. Something they can't kill. Ilari looked up. Do you feel it? What? Kyra asked. This isn't the end. Ilari stood, her fingers trailing along the edge of the nearest wall console. The trial changed things. In us. It cemented us. Riven said. No, Ilari said. It fused us. Kyra crossed the room, stopped behind him. You know what this means. They won't stop coming? He asked. They'll start coming harder. Vale answered. But now we bleed together. And we rise together. Ilari added. Riven turned, scanning their faces one by one. You three once called me parasite. Filth. A joke. Kyra didn't flinch. We were wrong. Vale stepped in closer. You didn't weaken us. Ilari smiled softly. You made us whole. And in that quiet, sun-warmed room, something else changed. No rituals. No performance. No urgency. Just the four of them. And the truth that now they were no longer navigating danger. They were becoming it. Later that night, word spread like lightning. The Terran consort had survived the trial. All three heirs had passed with him. The orb had turned white. For the first time in 1,000 years. An outsider might claim the throne beside bloodborne royalty. And across the stars, enemies began to tremble. Because the unthinkable had happened. Vela had found not just a ruler, but a reason to kneel. The next morning, the palace felt different. The banners of House Kareth still rippled in the wind. The marble floors still gleamed. But the shadows whispered less. The stairs lingered longer. The silence wasn't suspicion anymore. It was caution. And fear. Ilari noticed it first. A courier entered the garden, saw her and Riven sharing tea, and bowed lower than required. When she passed later in the archive halls, two nobles paused their conversation, not out of disdain, but reverence. We've become a symbol, she said quietly, returning to their chambers. Not of scandal. Of survival. Riven looked up from the floor where he sat cleaning his gear. They expect us to fracture. Now they expect us to lead. That same hour, Kyra sat before the Empress. No guards. No robes. Just bloodline and truth. You didn't think we'd survive it, Kyra said. I knew it was possible, the Empress replied, swirling a cup of blackroot wine. Unlikely. But possible. You tried to break us. I tried to reveal you. Kyra tilted her head. And now? The Empress stood, crossed to her slowly. Now you are something I cannot contain. That is more valuable than obedience. Kyra stepped forward. Then crown us. You'll get no crown, the Empress said. But you will get a war. A silence stretched between them. Then, who? Kyra asked. The Empress tapped her fingers against the sealstone window. House Verneth. They've allied with off-world separatists. They fear what you've become. And they should. Back in the royal suite, Vale lit a slow-burning herb at the edge of the window and watched smoke rise over the towers. They'll come for us soon, she said. Not through court challenges. Through sabotage. Discredit. Force. Riven leaned in the doorway. Let them. You think we're ready? Vale asked. No, he said honestly. But I think we're done playing their game. That night, the sisters gathered again. No audience, no ceremony. Just the four of them, around a low fire in the private war chamber, every wall lined with sealed archives and projection tablets. I propose we make our own council, Ilari said. Not just of blood. Of loyalty. Those who believe in what we've done. You want to recruit? Kyra asked. I want to arm us, Ilari said. Vale poured wine. And what do we call it? Kyra looked at Riven. He met her gaze evenly. The Ember Pact. Ilari smiled. Strong name. Simple, Vale added. Kyra lifted her cup. Then let it be known. The trial was not the end. Riven joined her. It was ignition. They drank together. One breath. One bond. One spark. The sabotage came at midnight. Not with explosions. Not with assassins. With silence. The palace lighting system flickered first. Then the gravity wells in the west tower glitched, causing a shift in water lines and floor sensors. Guards lost their patrol sync. Emergency escape tunnels were sealed with false alerts. And then the eastern gate, unguarded for the first time in a decade, opened without clearance. They came in cloaks. They came with blades. And they came for the Ember Pact. But they didn't come quietly enough. Vale heard the distortion first. She was sprawled across the common couch in her night wrap, half listening to Ilari speak about network infiltration patterns, when her ears twitched. She was up before she realized it. Someone's inside, she whispered. Ilari stood instantly. I didn't trigger anything. You didn't need to, Vale said. They didn't use the front. Kyra burst in through the side door. Fully armed, eyes burning. Gear up. Now. Riven followed, pulling on his undersuit, a knife already in his hand. West Passage. They're moving fast. They didn't argue. Didn't panic. They moved like a single unit. Ilari activated the inner seal locks. Divert power to interior defenses. If they disable the alarms. They already did, Kyra growled. But they didn't disable us. The intruders breached the second ring with plasma charges. 2 guards fell before they could draw. But when the third stepped through the threshold, Riven met him blade first. He moved without hesitation. Steel met armor, and sparks flew. One twist, one feint, one elbow, enemy down. Kyra was a storm. She moved like heat incarnate, spinning and cutting. One attacker tried to flank her. Ilari's precision shot dropped him mid-step. Vale leapt from the second-tier balcony, her blade catching one by the collarbone. She hit the ground rolling, kicking another square in the throat. Then silence. It was over in 90 seconds. Breathing hard, surrounded by bodies, they stood in a triangle, back to back, blades dripping, armor scorched. They sent mercs, Riven muttered, pulling off one of the attacker's masks. Low-tier, Kyra spat. Trained to wound, not kill. This was a test. They were watching us, Ilari said. Studying our formation, our delay response. This wasn't just sabotage. No, Vale added. This was an invitation. They hauled the bodies to the royal chamber floor. By morning, the Empress summoned them. But this time, they didn't wait for her words. Kyra threw the scorched mask onto the steps of the throne. You tell House Verneth, she growled. If they want a war, they already have one. The Empress didn't blink. You've crossed into legacy now, she said. You'll need more than fire. Riven met her eyes. Good, he said. Because fire's just the beginning. That night, Ilari uploaded the entire attack log to the Pact's private feed. 20 loyalists viewed it. Then 60. Then 200. By morning, the Ember Pact wasn't just a secret union. It was a movement. By dawn, the message had spread to every moon colony and deep world post under Valen rule. The Ember Pact was real. It had survived the trial. And now, it had bled. Within the hour, encrypted messages flooded the palace comm lines. I saw the footage. My cousin fell to Verneth Blades last cycle. I stand with you. The High Circle is stagnant. The pact is flame. Count me in. 3 heirs choosing unity? Unheard of. I thought it was a lie. Now I see. What began as whispers became a chorus. Then, an army. The first arrivals were quiet, 3 off-duty guards who had once stood in the back corners of the throne room. They showed up outside the Ember Pact's war chamber and saluted without words. By mid-afternoon, 5 communication officers offered to reroute palace logs directly to Ilari. By dusk, a third of the outer gate guards had requested reassignment to inner defense only. Translation: let us guard the pact. Inside the chamber, Ilari's fingers danced across her interface. Dozens of feeds streamed across the wall. Names. Pledges. Movement. This is happening, she said aloud. Vale leaned back, arms behind her head. Fast. Kyra stood motionless, scanning a tactical display. Too fast. Riven looked up from a weapons schematic. You think it's a trap? I think we've crossed into something irreversible, Kyra said. They don't see us as rebels now. They see us as revolution. Isn't that the point? Vale asked. Yes, Kyra said. But revolutions burn. Riven stepped forward. Then we control the fire. That night, they stood on the highest balcony of the east spire. The city glowed beneath them, threads of golden light twisting through black marble and alloy veins. Kyra's arms rested on the stone rail. Riven stood behind her, his chest at her back. Ilari leaned against one column, her datapad dark for once. Vale twirled a wineglass she hadn't sipped from. No words. Only gravity. Then, I didn't think it would feel like this, Ilari whispered. Like what? Vale asked. Like standing on the edge of something sacred. Kyra didn't look away from the skyline. Because we are. Riven wrapped his arms around her. Then let's not fall. Vale finally sipped. No. Let's fly. And far below, across the veined streets of the capital, the first ember symbols began to appear. Carved into stone. Burned into flags. Projected onto hover shuttles. 3 interlocked flames. And beneath them, the words, we do not fracture. We ignite. At first light, the Empress summoned them, not as heirs, not as rebels, but as the future. She waited alone in the throne hall. No guards. No drones. No pretense. Just a mother facing the fire she'd once tried to contain. When they entered, Kyra at the front, Ilari and Vale flanking, Riven walking between them, the Empress studied each face in turn. You can't put the fire out, can you? She asked quietly. Kyra's answer was simple. We don't want to. I know, the Empress replied. That's why I've called you here. Not to stop you. Not to punish you. She stepped down from the dais. To offer you everything, or warn you what comes if you take it. The 4 said nothing. Power or peace, she said. The High Circle will never give you both. They'll kneel if they must, but they'll sharpen blades while they do it. Vale tilted her head. What we've built isn't rebellion. It's clarity. And clarity, the Empress said, terrifies them. Riven stepped forward. Then they've already chosen fear. The Empress regarded him with something almost close to regret. Do you love them? There was no hesitation. Yes. All 3? Yes. Even knowing what that makes you. He met her gaze. It makes me theirs. And them, unstoppable. The Empress looked to her daughters, Kyra, once her iron shadow. Ilari, her silent observer. Vale, the one she underestimated. And now all of them, standing together, wrapped in ash, flame, and something even rarer, trust. I spent my life keeping you apart, she whispered. 1 heir. 1 crown. That's what I believed. She looked at Kyra. I taught you to conquer. At Ilari. I taught you to doubt. At Vale. I taught you to hide behind charm. Then her gaze returned to Riven. And you burned it all down. He said nothing. But Kyra stepped forward. We didn't destroy your legacy, she said. We outgrew it. The Empress smiled, thin, sad, but real. Then take it. The court. The bloodline. The empire. It's yours. Kyra blinked. That's it. There's one condition, the Empress said. Stand before them, not just as heirs, not as rebels or consorts or myths, but as truth. Vale raised a brow. What if the truth splits them? Then the empire splits, the Empress said simply. But if it holds, it becomes something it's never been. The four of them left the throne room not in chains or ceremony, but in silence. Together. No longer a scandal. No longer a secret. Just a force. That night, beneath an open sky stained violet by twin moons, the Ember Pact gathered every loyalist on the palace's highest terrace. Not as nobles. As believers. A single banner burned behind them, 3 interlocking flames. And beneath it, Riven stepped forward. No crown on his head. No blade in his hand. Just the scar on his shoulder, still visible beneath the black robe tied loose at his chest. We were told we'd fracture, he said. That what we are, what we feel, couldn't survive. He looked at each of them, Kyra, Ilari, Vale. And maybe they were right. He turned to the crowd. His voice low, steady, unshakable. Because we didn't survive. A pause. Then, we became something else. The wind stirred. The crowd leaned in. We became the match. Behind him, the 3 sisters stepped forward, eyes blazing. Not as rivals. As a singular force. And Riven finished, voice quiet as embers. We are not the mistake. He looked toward the throne tower, far above. We are the future. And across Vela, they began to chant his name. Not as a threat. Not as a consort. Not even as a man. But as legend. Fire Emberlight had begun. And nothing would ever be the same.